Welcome to People Pulse. Today, we have Siana Crescenzi, a distinguished HR professional with over a decade of experience specializing in strategic partnering and advisory roles. Since March, Siana serves as the Director of HR Strategic Partnering and Advisory at Pembina Pipeline Corporation. She leads the transformation of the strategic HR role, fostering a diverse, inclusive, and high performance culture. Siana provides strategic support to leadership teams. She's a dynamic leader and an advocate for positive change within organizations. Siana, welcome. Happy to have you here.
Oh, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Nana. Likewise, very happy to be here.
I think that we can agree that effective communication across generations is vital, especially for safety and operational efficiency.
Mhm.
Can you share with us some examples on how do you leverage these differences to solve some business challenges, like having a safer, more productive environment?
Yeah, I think this in general is a space that's evolving, right? Outside of the multi-generational workforce, of course, is a part of it, but I think it's something that we need to focus on and be proactive about. So, I think COVID spurred a lot of engagement and tools plethora of solutions that they use, but
Indeed.
definitely the younger generation is a lot more tech savvy, right?
Mm.
And so in my experience, they have ideas there. There is a pool of talent that is very creative and champions of different technology and communication mechanisms that we can engage. I think in terms of, your point around making safer, more productive environments, it's really again understanding where the challenges are and how technology and communication can be a part of that solution. So, Teams is an avenue for sure that drives that collaboration and can lead to, better productivity as well as safety. When we think about it from a field perspective,
Mhm,
how do we actually enable our field
mhm.
employees to have access to that, right? The nature of the work while also keeping them safe. Uh, I think it's a balance of all of that. It's engaging people for ideas. It's, being forward looking and understanding what types of technology and communication platforms are out there that can enable that. And then connecting it to, again, what are the needs and priorities that we need to ensure we stick to with that.
Thank you. And I would also like to relate this to a culture of high performance. As we know, it is now championed by companies like Tesla and Elon Musk, and it's
Mhm.
gaining a significant traction. And this approach emphasizes driving innovation and operational excellence, and it's prompting some to believe that companies are becoming less tolerant of anything else than peak performance from their people. What would you say are some critical steps that HR needs to take to build this culture of high performance, and maybe some metrics that you think would be useful to tracking productivity and performance?
I think foundational to performance is again the culture and the values, and that needs
Mhm.
to be grounded in trust. And when I talk about trust, it's actually like psychological safety, right? Without it, people don't come to work as their fulsome selves. They do not feel comfortable or
Mm,
safe to challenge status quo, challenge groupthink, bring ideas or fresh perspective. And without that, organizations can stagnate.
mm,
Leadership, modeling that is key to driving
mm,
that culture and leading the way.
mm,
And I think an element of any leader's performance should be measured on their ability to do that, to develop, inspire, motivate employees in achieving high performance, but doing that in a way with psychological safety being at the forefront of it. It also impacts your actual safety metrics, right? Metric wise, performance, I mean, you have the traditional performance management cycles and
mm,
systems, where you have goals, KPIs.
mm,
So we measure that. I think another way to look at that is how do we engage stakeholders in understanding the success of people? And I say stakeholders because we all have different customers, tend to focus internally in that. Who are the
mm.
external stakeholders that can give us insight into, performance, engagement, what we could do better? So customer satisfaction information can be critical to that. I think a movement away from just individual performance to actually looking at team performance to assess where we are on the performance curve, because more and more we're moving away from that. We're
Mm,
looking at a lot of organizations are going towards an agile team structure where you have an overall operating model. But what stands as part of that is anytime there's complex challenges or opportunities that we need to garner a team around solving,
mm,
you stand up a team to go after that, solve it, and then you stand them down. Right.
mm,
So I think moving away from just an individual view to a team view is something that's important.
mm,
Productivity wise, it depends on the specific goals, I think, around, what are the productivity needs in alignment with the corporate strategy and the business outcomes we're seeking to achieve. Typical things, I mean, I've seen this on the manufacturing construction front, cycle time. So, what's the total time it takes for a worker to complete a task, right? And the
mm,
lean methodology, specifically on those two industries, you have targets around that are measured daily and impact the value of every employee that they're bringing, right, to the organization. Revenue per employee is also something that's common, output per employee. I've seen this more, like I said, in the manufacturing construction industry. Just again, you're measuring a specific, product specific task. I think, utilization or capacity rates are also very important. So, how do we effectively look at employees utilizing their hours? Where are they spending their time? And what capacity do they have to take on more? And this is where I see a huge opportunity for tech, HR tech, any tech, really, right? How can we evaluate what is the work that humans are doing today? Where can technology augment that to drive efficiency and to open up capacity for people to actually do what is innately human?
mm, mm. You know, thank you. And the skills based project teams that you mentioned, I think it's a great prediction. And I would say that it's gaining a lot of attention recently.
Yeah.
So we can definitely delve into that into one of our next conversations. And I want to thank you for recognizing the importance of psychological safety and trust
Hmm.
when you mentioned that culture of high performance, because I think that it can be taken for granted or overlooked, but it has just such a significant impact. And while we're at it, it's evident and it's safe to say that leaders have huge impact in building this culture of high performance and navigating change.
Hmm.
What's your way of checking whether leaders have the necessary skill set to drive this change and culture of performance?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. And I think, there's different approaches you can take. I think firstly, it starts with really understanding the leader as the human, right? Who is the leader as a human and how do you enable them to actually bring their full selves to work and drive the culture that we talked about, right? Grounded on psychological safety. Employee engagement scores can provide a lot of insight into leadership strengths, challenges, capabilities, opportunities, right? So, how do we actually use surveys to measure employee engagement and satisfaction coupled with, or how does it correlate and couple with leadership effectiveness? So, I think that's an interesting data point. 360 feedback tools are a great development tool to gather insight into leaders' capabilities. And I think it's very important for them to be led by the actual individual with an appetite to really understand the feedback, not take it defensively, but use it as a development tool for them in building their effectiveness as a leader. Leadership assessments, are another area that are important. And I think in absence of an assessment framework and a program, bias comes into play,
Mm,
right?
mhm,
So, how do we actually look at the right assessment and criteria and capabilities that are required of our leaders? How do we effectively assess those through formalized assessments that can actually give us the data and objective view of where leaders thrive? Where are their strengths? What are their development opportunities? Yes, there needs to be a focus on that, but how do we actually focus on where they thrive and what they're good
mhm,
at and
mhm,
really leaning into that? Not to say that they don't focus on areas that they need to work on, but I think there's an important element of really leveraging people's strengths and
mhm,
coupling that to the work that they do. And and I think another necessary skill to evaluate is how they actually drive change. So understanding how they think, about their business, the teams that they
mm,
lead,
mm,
how they observe, how they shadow, how they enable that for others,
mhm,
and what's their track record in being a change leader. Because
mm.
change is something like change leadership and leading transformations, I think is a key leadership capability
Of
in the
course.
world that we work in. So where are they at today? How do they improve that? And how do you actually give them the opportunity to do that and endorse them and sponsor them and stand behind them and support them?
Hmm. I really appreciate your people first approach. I mean, what you're basically saying is understanding leaders as human, first, how they lead change. Do they first bring their full self to work? Whether leaders have the psychological safety, so then they can be able to promote it within their teams. And then I think it's a very useful tip that you mentioned feedback having such an important role here, And as you say, the appetite to use feedback as a developmental tool, the objective, constructive feedback taken, from 360, and
Mhm.
the focus, of course, being on where people thrive, where everybody, how people can develop, everyone, including the leaders. So I guess, investing in people development is essential to have this
Yes.
skilled and adaptable workforce. Can you perhaps walk me through the process of designing and implementing impactful and valuable learning programs? And if possible, once it is set, how do we ensure that they're effective?
Yeah. I think again, I'm going to repeat myself when it's always about the need, right? So when we
I
look
mean,
at the learning that's required,
mhm,
a learning program, why is that? How does it align with, again, the business strategy, the problem, the business outcomes we're after, and taking a systematic view of it, right? So as it relates to learning and development, I think it's from a capabilities lens, it's looking at what are the future needs of the workers of the future, right? So what is that workforce of the future? What are the capabilities that we require? Where are we at today with our current workforce? And of course, cutting it at different levels, leadership, individual contributors, skill set wise, critically, looking at different avenues of that. And, creating a case for the learning and development that's required to get us to the future state that we're targeting, all in service, again, of the business outcomes we're seeking to achieve. One of the things I'm passionate about, and have worked on and we're working through is building a learning organization. So, one that is centered on psychological safety, but one that is also centered on enabling people to be curious, to hypothesize, trial things out, iterate, embrace failure, not as, oh, I didn't succeed at what I was endeavoring to do. No, what was the learning? There's always a learning and how we iterate and apply that into our work. So when we think about, just curiosity as a capability, what will that do for the company, right? As we think about the future, we're upon a time, across the board in all industries, some are more ahead than others in digitizing work, right? To enable that, you need people to be you can have the best technology, but if you don't have users that are actually interfacing, adopting it, the technology is not going to yield the value. I think it's really looking at what are the key enablers of your strategy and where do people fit into that and what are the capabilities that we need to build. And then putting the case for change in a plan that's collective and holistic. And learning and development is a part of that.
of course. Thank you. I think it's safe to say that you're very much invested into future trends, into technology. You seem to be very much on the forefront on everything that is new in the HR space. Can you perhaps share your own way of staying current on the latest trends in HR tech? And how do you identify what are the effective tools that can support your HR strategy?
Mm. Yeah. One of my values is learning. Like to me, that's something I'm passionate about. I always have been, whether it's an art class, a gardening class, learning something about a different country through travel, and of course related to work. I've always been passionate about learning something new and something that's relevant that I can apply into work to drive efficiency, productivity, and value. And honestly, a lot of it is through reading, peer networking,
Mhm.
experimenting with tools. Like I think about ChatGPT. That's something that a powered tool, like in terms of getting you to 80% of a version of work that you need to do. And then, from there, actually, again, bringing the human element and what is innately human to that work. So that playing around in that tool itself has brought a lot of value. I've applied it with my team as well. It's something that, we leverage a lot of, and we're finding that it's opening up capacity for different types of work. Um, Podcasts, I love podcasts on my drives into work and, back home. I'm a big fan of Brene Brown, so her Unlocking Us and Dare to Lead podcast. There's the HR Tech Weekly podcast all on Spotify. So I like to listen to those and, think about how they're related and applied to the work that I do.
Mhm.
Copilot also is another phenomenal tool. So I've talked about
Mm.
Copilot as being a member of our team with my team, right? And,
Mm.
just positioning it that way in the work that it can actually do for a team and our
Mm.
effectiveness and capturing, our thoughts and perspectives through meetings and brainstorm sessions, like it invaluable. So a lot of it comes through just curiosity and like leaning into different things, staying on top of, different communities and associations that I'm a part of, networking. But inherent to that is just being curious and like
Mm.
recognizing that the learning piece is something that's required for leaders or anyone, any employee of the future. That learning and agility and being curious is actually what's going to differentiate people. So I don't know if I fully answered your question. This one feels
Mm.
more.
Yeah, you thank you so much. And I will definitely explore some of the podcasts and sources that you shared. But just staying curious resonates with me too. Always keep learning, always keep learning, and always have this appetite for networking, learning from peers, and staying curious. Now, AI and automation are also increasingly shaping the HR strategy. How do you envision AI and automation to play a role in building our cultures, and what future trends do you anticipate will have the biggest impact on strategic HR within the energy sector?
Yeah. I mean, AI and automation will augment and change the work that humans do, right? And they're a tool. They will never replace humans. Was innately human remains. And I think that's a huge opportunity ahead of us. And, really for HR in effectively positioning that and working with leaders and people to enable that safety and comfort in AI. Because as I'm sure you've heard from, some of the other speakers and, through your own experience, there's a lot of fear around AI and automation. And will it replace people? It will not. I think it will make people more effective, more engaged, and drive more meaningful, contribution. So I think about the tools and the technology that AI brings around as unlocking capacity for people to do what is innately human. So it's a huge opportunity, but we need to build a culture where
Mhm.
people feel safe, people are inspired and curious to play
Mm.
around with that technology to really evaluate how that can be done, right? And for there to be user adoption. I think RPA, the robotic process automation, I mean, there's so much opportunity in that as it
Mm.
relates to HR, repetitive, manual, such as benefits administration, any, compliance reporting, any reporting really of such.
Mm.
Where do we apply RPA where we want to increase efficiency, reduce errors, and free up HR professionals to actually do more impactful and strategic work? That's an area. Another I've been doing some reading on and see more and more on is the augmented, like virtual reality training that's AI enhanced. So how
Mhm.
do you actually take a process and bring in, a virtual reality lens or experience for a user? So as opposed to them actually reading a process, how do you give them an immersive experience through that process and have someone through that virtual reality training show how to manage that? And I think, that's specifically for complex and hazardous tasks in the energy sector. Like that's something that could be very valuable and
Mhm.
definitely picking up movement in. Skills development and training for sure. When I
Mhm.
think of learning platform and, how we leverage AI powered tools to provide that overall learning, but also
Mhm.
personalized learning based on the experience and the
Mm.
relevant skills of the individual. I think there's, a lot of opportunity for that. And there's a lot of technological advancement and regulatory changes in the industry. So, being able to have something that's AI powered and skill development and training as part of the future workforce and what's required is key.
Mhm.
And then I think there's something, I don't know what it looks like. This is something I need to probably research more of. But when I think about workforce planning
Mm,
and, how we take a strategic and proactive view of it based on our strategy, the business outcomes we're seeking to achieve, what is the well forward view of the workforce that's required to actually enable that? There must be some type of technology that can enable that view
mm,
and the ability to play around with scenarios. So we're expecting X mega project to be funded. If that is a go, with a click of a button, here is the predictive workforce plan that will be required. There's something there that's of interest for me to explore as we think about, how do we anticipate skill gaps? We talked about retirement in an early example, right? And
mm,
managing the workforce ups and downs, overlaying that, the business strategy and the focus areas and the objectives and the funding on projects or new initiatives. How do we bring that all together into a forward
mm.
view, proactive workforce plan?
Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you. I mean, AI will undoubtedly it's becoming a powerful tool for HR in, like you said, workforce planning, enabling predictive analytics to anticipate skills gaps, to optimize our talent acquisition plans, to personalize growth plans. I guess that
Mhm.
the potential for AI to transform HR goes far beyond what we can discuss at this point. And it's an exciting area with just so much more potential to explore. And I'm so excited to see what the future holds. Now, on a personal note, throughout your career, you have undoubtedly faced crossroads where tough decisions had to be made. Can you share with the listeners what were your personal guiding principles when you had to make some pivotal career decisions? And what were some of the lessons learned? Like, what's your secret sauce to manage such critical moments
Mm,
in your professional life?
yeah, I am very grounded in my values. So for me, when I ever am in a position of crossroads, I find that that's my compass, my moral compass of really helping me make a decision. One learning I'll share early on is take time to reflect and think through whatever crossroad you are personally, map out the options. We tend to, I have at least tended to engage people, that I value their perspective on, and a lot of them early on in my career, and that only confused me. So I think take a step back for yourself and reflect and ground in what's important to you, your values. I am someone, for me, what gets me up every morning and what's most important to me in my work is bringing value and making an impact. And, a third part is leaving people better than where I found them, right? So when I think about where I focus when I'm at a crossroads, it's really in values and where do those three things hit based on the opportunity or challenge I'm facing. Secret sauce, I mean, for me, it's part of my development has been in, moving away from, oh, this is a specific career path I have with a focus of vertical growth and, trialing these things in a defined timeline on that. And, in the last several years, primarily due to the work I've done with my coach, I've really broken away from that as lean in, do your best, embrace the discomfort that comes with doing hard things, know your audience and, how you engage them, but be curious and open to the challenges and opportunities that present themselves. And I think just stepping in and being a part of that discomfort that can come with it has been very instrumental. It's part of my learning and has absolutely influenced the way that I work and how I lead my team. Change and ambiguity, as I said, I mean, in the world we work and live in, there's constant change and it's very unsettling, what's happening. Globally, there's more negative news
Mm,
than positive. So I think also I'm someone that's a huge optimist, and I always try to look at, things from the lens of glass half full and where's the opportunity and the growth and the learning. So my advice is lean in, And don't be set on a specific outcome or target. Of course, have a vision for that, but have fun through the journey. Be open to the learning, explore it, like bring people along and play around, be playful in this space. Honestly, one of my biggest teachers is my son, Marco. He's
Mm.
3.5 years old. And the curiosity that kids have, if we had that as adults and professionals, it'd be fascinating to see the world that, we live in and work in. And as leaders, what influence we bring. So Marco has taught me a lot of this, and it's been part of my journey as, a mother, but also have had, the support from my coach and mentors in my own journey, right? And in developing as a leader and a human to get to this point. So lean in, lean in and have fun.
Wow, this was amazing. Thank you so much for your honesty, for your optimism throughout this conversation. It's been so refreshing to hear your insights, especially now at the end when you also mentioned your son, Marco, and how motherhood also has shaped you as a professional. It's safe to say that we've gained so much actionable advice from this conversation. And to all our listeners, remember, as Siana said, keep learning, stay curious, and stay true to your values. That's the key to unlocking your full potential. I really hope that we'll have you again here on People Pulse. And to all our listeners, if you found this episode as useful as I did, subscribe for more insightful discussions with leading experts in HR and leadership. Stay tuned for our next episode as we continue to explore the heartbeat of a healthy workplace. Thank you.